Hey crew, it's Presley. We are going to be talking today 2.3, the sea roads, the exchanges that happened across the Indian Ocean between, roughly 1200 and 1450. We'll go a little bit each direction. We'll go back a little bit and then bring it forward. But I wanted to point out on this map, and you'll kind of see it here, about how Indian Ocean trade is something that's a series of connecting. It's kind of like the Silk Roads in the sense that it's not one lane, it's multiple, it's like a highway system. But one of the other things I wanted to point out is we gave the example of how in Unit 1 about how the Malay people kind of controlled trade in the Indian Ocean. And this is that example we're talking about, big picture, how everybody who tried to come through here, the Malay controlled. So trade routes in the Indian Ocean, kind of before we're talking, really did continuously connect people across the Eastern Hemisphere. They are going to continue the kind of trade that the Greeks, the Romans, the Phoenicians had really gotten going in the Mediterranean, and they're going to bring that concept eastward. So about the year 1000, current era, Venice is the center of commercial trade work in the Mediterranean. They are controlling the flow of imported and resold goods throughout the Mediterranean coast, and they are linking Mediterranean trade to the Indian Ocean. Just like before, this is a snapshot of goods that would be exchanged through the Indian Ocean basin, certain regions and what they took other places. Again, you don't have to have memorized the entire list, but it would probably be a good idea to know 2 or 3 things that come from each region. Again, essay, short answer, or long answer essay, or heck, even a DBQ if we come to it, that talks about this topic, being able to add in those little factoids of not just talking about goods, but what goods go from where to where. That's the difference in the big points. So we're talking about transoceanic trade when we're talking about Indian Ocean trade. So sea trade back then and today too, it is cheaper to send things in a boat than it is over land. And you're like, what? But think about it. If I'm sending a bunch of goods, like 6 tractor trailer loads worth, I could hire 6 trucks, pay for the gas for 6 trucks, pay for the drivers for 6 trucks, or maybe I get one boat and line up all 6 barges on top, all 6 trailers on the back of the boat, and then I'm paying one driver. May take them a little longer, but it is still cheaper. And they can also a boat can carry much larger and much heavier goods than, say, a camel can. So this changes or makes the market in oceanic travel different because they can carry bulk goods for mass markets instead of light luxury goods. So you're going to see more things like different types of luxury wood, bulk, like big barrels of types of grains and things, because the boats can handle the weight. Also with the transoceanic trade routes, we're going to see better and newer technology. People start to figure out towards the beginning of the time frame we're talking about the predictability of the monsoon winds. They are going to go one direction in the spring and then turn around and come the other direction in the fall. So being able to predict which way the wind's going, keep in mind we don't have gasoline-powered boats or anything like that. So we're using sails. So knowing which way the wind's going predictably helps us be more willing to take long-distance travel where you cannot see land because you're not going to get stuck out in the middle of nowhere with no engine to get you going. We also come up with, in the Arabic seas, they're going to come up with what's called a lateen sail, and that's this sail up here in the top. It's a triangular shaped sail, and why that's such a big deal, a triangular shaped sail instead of a square shaped sail, is a square sail can only be pushed in the same direction the wind goes. But a triangular sail, like a sailboat uses, can be curved. And if it's curved, you can have the wind kind of like aerodynamically come over it and then swing around and push behind you. Or you can flatten it out and use it like a square sail. So it's a big deal that the Arabic world came up with this lateen sail. Learn it, know it. Man, you should know lateen sail because that's one of those terms, actually several terms on here. Lateen, juke, Dial, compass, astrolabe, these are all things that, man, College Board has asked about every year I've been teaching this course. Sometimes it was a multiple choice question, sometimes it was in an essay, but every year they ask about the technology of the transoceanic trade routes. So those ships. In China, they build the junks, which are designed, this isn't a very good picture, but it's designed with a very kind of large area up front to be able to pile cargo, and then there's just kind of like a raised deck in the back. And the idea of the junk was it was designed to carry bulk cargo and a lot of cargo without, having a lot of drag on the water. The Dao is a similar ship. The compass is going to be a Chinese invention. That compass points south. It looks like a spoon, if you've seen that one. And you're like, it's point south. It doesn't really matter which way it points, so long as it points the same way every time predictably. And the astrolabe. So the compass is going to tell you which direction you're going, north, south, east, west, or in between. But the astrolabe is going to show you, that's Arabic, I spelled that one wrong. The astrolabe is going to show you how far you are north or south of the equator and east or west of the prime meridian. So you can use the compass to say, I need to go east, and the astrolabe will say how many degrees east you need to go. If you've ever seen a pirate movie like Pirates of the Caribbean, and they have the little thing on the map where it looks like almost like a math compass, and they're kind of marking things, they're usually marking on the map how many degrees they need to turn the boat. So the world of the Indian Ocean. Trade in the Indian Ocean is a series of trade networks of towns and cities, urban centers. So you go from one large urban center, pile up your boat, sail away to another large urban center. The Malay sailors get this thing going with their double outrigger canoes. That's Pocahontas, wrong Disney movie, Moana. Is going to be a good example of kind of a double rig canoe, that kind of two canoes with the flat area in between. They are going to go to Madagascar. Austronesian language and crops, they're going to bring with them bananas, coconuts, taro. And that's going to spread into Africa. So some of these foods we think are native to Africa, or we think of Africa when we think about it, they actually came from the Malay areas in the South Pacific, or the kind of Pacific Ocean area. Merchants from the Roman world and the Arabic Peninsula world are going to settle in Southeastern Asia and Eastern China. This is all these, and I've mentioned this over and over again, that's why it's in caps here, diasporic communities. These are people who keep their culture but are not living in their quote-unquote homeland. So this whole system, if you think back at the map up here, India is the fulcrum. Everybody comes and goes this way, or they go around and go this way. So everything, like a fulcrum, swings back and forth from this point. And India's got the spices, so everybody wants those. Got 2 slides left, folks. Okay, so why do things change? In Southeast Asia, you're going to see new cities and new states and kingdoms rise and fall. We talked about the Malay kingdom, Shirijava, how they dominated that choke point. Again, back to that map, that choke point there in the islands for a long time, about 400 years. They got rich by taxing passing ships. You see, because of this trade, the spread of Indian culture. You see Hinduism and Buddhism spreading across the Indian Ocean basin. We call this the Indianization of that area. And you see the Sultanate of Malacca start to control the spice trade. Okay, so that's Southeast Asia. And what about Africa? You see, and this is huge, I've seen this group asked about a lot too, the Swahili. The Swahili civilization is a series of commercial city-states that are in Western Africa. Let's see if I can get you back up to that map again. So the Swahili city-states are these right here. These Eastern African city-states that are kind of work like a confederacy, kind of like the Mayan had worked with trade. They are a confederacy of states. Each independently rules itself, but they connect each other with trade. So why do we care about this? Well, what's interesting is they are a huge part of the rise in Islam that is going to spread again through Africa. You're going to see the increase of Islamic sailors landing in this eastern part of Africa. People there are going to convert to Islam for trade purposes, often, to get an advantage in trade. These cities are going to flourish on the coast, and they're going to get very kind of cosmopolitan, where the interior of Africa is still going to be very kind of transient pastoralist. Why do we care so much as historians? What's kind of cool about the Swahili language is you see how embedded the trade is, because their language is a mix of traditional Bantu African language and Arabic. It's really kind of cool. And the College Board loves that kind of syncretism that you see there. Okay, last thing we're going to talk about is Zheng He. This guy is awesome. He is the famous, great Chinese mariner who's going to do 7 different voyages for the Ming Emperor. So on behalf of the emperor there, these voyages are going to send him throughout the South China Sea, the Indian Ocean, the Arabian Sea, the Red Sea, all on the coast of East Africa. These 7 total voyages are diplomatic. He's not showing up to take over in a military sense. What he's showing up to say is he's trying to set up trade. He's trying to establish a general understanding of how amazing China is, and you don't want to try and attack China. To give you a comparison, this guy is like for lack of a better phrase, the Columbus of the East, but he's way cooler than Columbus. Columbus is 3 ships. Columbus had 3 ships, right? Nina, Pinta, Santa Maria. Zheng He's ships were like 200 of them, and there's thousands of people who work for him on those ships. They're floating cities. All 3 of Columbus's ships would have fit on just the top deck alone of Zheng He's front ship. These ships are so big, they have working kilns in them to forge iron and armor on the boat while they're traveling. Like, this stuff is amazing. I know John Green talks about him a little bit, but Zheng He is definitely worth digging into as far as cool people. His story is pretty awesome. All right, that wraps up today. We are going to talk about the final third of the major trade routes in Eurasia, the kind of sand roads of Africa, next week. So if you have questions, let me know. Feel free to send me a message. If you've got extra time today, feel free to attack some of those ed puzzles, and enjoy your weekend. I will see you on Tuesday because you don't have class on Monday. Bye, folks.